everyone. Welcome to another episode of Relate to You. We are so excited for this episode because we have a very special guest. We have Miss Lovely Sandra Tovar, Sandra Jeanette Tovar, might I add.
Thank you for having me.
And we are so excited to have you. I mean, there's just so many reasons as to why you were an option for us. There's just so much we have learned from just observing you, working with you in ministry. And, I tend to call her the county queen. That's just me. But it's just the point of today's topic is to talk about women in leadership. And we feel like you are the perfect person to talk about not just in a career aspect of it, but also in a ministry aspect of it. So just a little bit of background with Sandra. She's also our co-pastor's wife. So she serves in a lot of different departments in our church. Prior to that, she's just been in a little bit of everything. Women of Virtue. She's been in special events. She's just been everywhere. And obviously, career-wise, she's also an extremely amazing employee of the County of Ventura, which I don't know your official title if you want to share, but she's just been a little bit of everything. But before we go into all of that, I'd love to ask if, there's anything that you would love to share about your start. Because before we get to the questions about leadership, what do you think was the push or the motivation for you to change yourself or become this person that
The
was
county
confident?
queen.
The county queen, What was that for you?
Thank you, Kessia, and thank you, Marilu, for having me here. It's an honor. And I know our time is limited, so I don't want to take a lot of time. But I think there's a lot to unpack on your question. And there's a lot of testimony. It's been a long journey. But I'm going to try to just take it a little bit at a time. And so just to give you a reference, like the person that you identified and that you just mentioned, I'm like, who is she? I don't know who she is. Because we do everything for the honor and glory of God, and we serve with a humble heart. And so when you do things with that mentality, you just serve and you do it with joy, and you don't realize the impact that it has on people. But apparently it has. So I'm happy to hear that. And I'm honored. But just to give you a little reference of who, my upbringing, I was a very, very shy person.
No.
Growing up.
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
No, yes. I was that kid in the classroom in the back that didn't want to be noticed. I came from the avenue. My parents were immigrants, hardworking immigrants. And so we didn't have money. We didn't have high education, but we had God and we had love in our family. And as with all families, we have our differences, our fights between siblings, but I'm number 8 on the totem pole.
Wow.
So I always said I always go undetected with my siblings. And so I always did things that nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to pay attention. But when you have a humble heart and you do things for the Lord, I mean, God rewards you in amazing ways.
Yes.
And so growing out of the avenue and being active in my youth group, I think that's what was the most impactful thing in my life. And that helped me pivot my mentality, because as a child of God, you go through life and you see, what youth is like, the lifestyle in the secular world, in school. And so, but then when you're in the youth, so there's like 2 conflicting lifestyles that you are trying to reconcile as you are, pushing through to serving God. There's like your secular life at school and friends, and then there's church life. And oftentimes I question myself, like, well, who am I? Am I the person, number 8 on the totem pole in the family, the shy girl that never fits anywhere in high school? Or am I, a child of God that goes to church, is active with the youth, and, wants to have a fulfilling life as a wife, with a family? So that was conflicting in my life growing up. But I think for me, what made the shift that possibly you are mentioning too is the mentors that I had in my life.
Wow.
You know, the Sister Rose Herrera's, Brother Ed Herrera, the fellowship at the church, the activities that the church promoted for youth engagement. And it was challenging. It came with its challenges. But, you know, in my mind and what my mother had taught me of being a servant of God, is like God is first in everything that we do. And so that led to me finding my husband. And I had one amazing lady in our church, and I am not ashamed to give her name, and a huge shout out to Sister Terry Castro, because she deposited faith in this manner in my life. One day we were having a conversation, and she told me, you know, Sandra, you're so pretty, and there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to try to hit on you. But you need to always seek a guy that serves God. Because if he loves God, he's going to love you. And he's going to put you and treat you like a queen. And I never forgot that. And so even though I had heard it from my mom, when she said it,
it clicked.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So then all along came Brother Tovar. And so met him, got married. We had our kids, and there was a journey in that. And then all of a sudden one day I decided, I think I want to contribute a little bit more. You know, I saw my husband. I had been a stay-at-home mom for a long, long time. And I said, you know, I think it's time to go to school.
Wow.
Go to school. All the meantime, he had 2 jobs. He was the church, one of the church musicians. He was very active in the church ministry, and so was I. Back then, we used to go to church and clean on a weekly basis, the sanctuary, the kitchen.
Yeah,
and we
I
had
remember.
kitchen duty every Sunday. It was a small church, so, you know, it was like every month you had a kitchen duty. So I learned from the hermanas how to cook. How to better cook, serve, you know. And so I learned through engaging with the Dorcas.
And you got married young, right?
I got married at 17.
That's right. That was like, I remember.
And I distinctly remember saying, I'm just like a high schooler. What, I have no business with the Dorcas or the, you know, the hermanas. But it's a journey that we all, you know, kind of have to navigate and go through. And I learned so much from them. I mean, not just the cooking, their consejos, and just the family. And we helped each other. We used to have the cleaning supplies or the tamales next to our, you know, those baby, what do they call them? The baby cribs.
Oh, like a nursery kind of like?
Yeah, the playpens. We used to call them playpens. So my kids were literally in the playpen while the hermanas and I were making tamales. That was my growing up as a young wife in church. Wow. Now it's a little bit different. Yeah. Now we say, oh, this couple just got married. Let's give them some time to acclimate. I mean, I was like, here's the tamalera. Start.
As soon as you had kids and got married, you're like Dorcas status.
Put to work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Times have changed.
Yes. Totally. You know, and God had been good to us because, like I said, he surrounded us with good pastors, amazing mentors. And I cannot overemphasize it. If you are a young person starting in church and you're just starting your marriage, find mentors. Yeah. They will, if you are open and have an open heart, you can be vulnerable and they will tell you what is right and wrong. Right. And I will tell you, Sister Rose and Brother Ed sometimes had to pull me in and say, that is not okay. And I had to decide, do I accept and open my heart to their instruction, or do I refute it? And I'm glad I did, because if I hadn't, I don't know where the Tovar family would be right now. Wow. Without God's people mentoring us. And it's hard. And it's not easy when somebody when you get instruction from a minister, a pastor, the right way, of course. But I think if you're a young lady at church, find a mentor. If you're a young man, find a mentor. If you are a young couple, find a mentor. If you are, even us, in the leadership, we have mentors. When I remember when Pastor and Sister Erica became bishops, the Apostolic Assembly assigned them a mentor.
Wow.
And so because it's important to have those individuals that have
Right.
gone through the journey before you that can help you.
Yeah.
And so, having said that, then we jump over to the other side that you mentioned, which is my career.
Yeah.
You know, you can always go back and say, oh, if I would have done it, I would have done it differently. I don't think I want to say that because God had a plan all along.
Right.
If I were to say, oh, I would have gone to school first, that means I wouldn't have been able to stay with my kids. I was able to stay with my kids
How long did you stay with them?
10 years.
10 years.
Wow.
Wow.
So I went from, being a young bride, stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I didn't have to worry about anybody taking care of my kids. I didn't have to worry about maternity leave. I didn't know what it was to make money prior to being married.
Amazing. Wow.
I based.
Also, you never worked.
I worked little jobs like
Oh, I
Jack in the
see.
Box. And
Okay.
Can I get you a jumbo jet? And I also worked at Target.
Wow.
So yeah, so I had little jobs and babysitting, but I didn't have a job, a career. So I could not make a difference between me staying at home and going back to work. I call it a blessing in disguise because I was able to stay home with my kids. I enjoyed. Were we broke? Yes. Let's be honest. It was challenging. It was hard, but I would never trade it for anything in the world because I saw Jacob take his first steps. I saw Timothy take his first steps. I, took him to school. I picked him up. I didn't have to worry about it until like Tim was about, I don't know, 3 years old or 4 years old that I actually decided to join the workforce. And that was challenging in itself because, 3 kids,
Yeah.
a Hispanic husband, a household. And then Sister Sandra didn't settle for that. She wanted to go back to school. So full-time job and
Wow.
school and 3 kids.
My goodness.
And we were still loyal.
To the
The
church.
church,
To the
to
church.
your
Wow.
ministry.
We never missed Sundays. Like never. That was just one of the things, the commitments that my husband and I made, that no matter what is going on in our household, Sundays were dedicated for the Lord.
Right.
And that was it. Like there was nothing else. Like we're going to go to church in the morning and then we're going to do something else in the evening with other friends or anything.
Yeah.
We would fellowship with other church members, but Sunday was the day for the Lord.
Right.
And if there's a pillar in our life that I can speak of, I think that was one of them.
That was one.
The pillars of being consistent to church, regardless of how we felt or what was going on in our household. So I think that was one of the things. But yeah, and God has blessed me in the work that I do. It aligns very much and very well with the work that we do at church over the last, I want to say, 10 years. It has really aligned with the service and the passion
Right.
and the love for people and serving the most vulnerable individuals in our community. Lately, I've been working with the homeless population
Right.
and individuals that have no medical insurance and need to get connected with medical services. Prior to that, it was behavioral health, so psychological services, therapy services for individuals. And throughout each of those positions that I've held, God continues to grow my ministry
Right.
because it's applicable not just in the work field, but also in our church.
Right.
And it's really important to understand that the people that we serve at work, because you also work for the healthcare agency, it's the same people that often result being in, our congregation.
Yeah.
And maybe the next time I'll let I'm going to ask Sister Erica if I can share an interesting and funny story that happened to us, but I'm going to have to ask for her permission first because, yes, we serve the same people that we see in church Sundays is the same people that we're going to serve on Monday
Right.
or Tuesday at work. And so I think for that, it has helped me align my career with what the leadership in church. And it's the same thing. You treat everybody with love and respect and as the creation and children of God that they are.
I have a question. I have a question on that. Would you say that your Christian background and your beliefs help you for that job, or that job also reassures you in the ministry at church?
I would say the first. I think church prepared me for the career path that I was going to take because it was my values that guided me to the path. So once you start going to school as a young child or as a young lady, you start deciding what do you value the most. And
Right.
if you go to
Right.
the career centers, like the first thing they ask you is like, well, how much money do you want to make?
Yeah.
Like they don't even ask you like, what are you passionate about? What do you like to do? They ask you to the right to the grain, like, well, how much money do you want to make?
Yeah.
What is the lifestyle that you want to have?
Oh, wow.
And so it's like, okay, well, what pays more? Well, doctors, lawyers. Okay, I want to do that. But is that really your passion, your
calling,
love,
yeah.
your calling? And so for me, it was interesting because, again, my mentor, Sister Rosie, one day gave me a little card that she got at the Bible store. And the name Sandra, it had the definition. And for the first time, again, I'm shy, I'm naive. I see this little card that she gives me and it says Sandra. And the definition is helper of mankind.
Wow.
And so I took that like, that's my calling. That's what
interesting.
I really truly believe that there's something in the name that you are given.
Yes.
And as parents, we try to find like a meaningful reason.
Yeah.
So yes, you think about your child's name and what do you want to name them. I don't think my mom knew the definition of Sandra. She probably just heard it from some
nice.
novela or the comadre down the street. But she chose Sandra, and so I took it as okay, God, this is my meaning. One of the things that my mentor, Sister Rosie, taught me was to be sensitive to the Word of God. And she would always tell us as juniors, God can speak to you through a song, through the birds, the environment, the wind. God will softly tell you in your heart and in your spirit and in your mind what direction to go. And so, I know it sounds a little bit like cheesy, but when I saw that in my name, I'm like,
I'm going to make that mine. Yeah.
like that is me. Like I want to help people
Right.
in whatever way I can. So, but it took a process for me to go from that shy girl. I'm not kidding. In kindergarten, I used to like sit in a little corner and just be like, this.
I cannot picture it. Can you?
I can't. I really can't.
Yeah, I was probably like, I don't know, 20 pounds. I was super skinny. And just sit there and I would just, and I would see like the other young, kids that were just so hyper. Interestingly enough, how God has worked in my life and by his amazing grace and the confidence that he gives you to become who you need to become
Right.
for his vessel, for his honor and glory. I went to a seminar from work and they had like the Myers-Briggs from a scale like from timid to introspective to the what's the other one?
Extroverted.
Yeah.
Extroverted. I was like on that side. Like I was kind of like the last one over there. I'm like, and so I started thinking and analyzing and thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I have come a long way. I could spark a conversation with anybody sitting in a park bench.
Yes,
Yes,
which
you
is why
can.
we have a hard time envisioning you being introverted. Like, we just can't.
But I think it's just the confidence that God gives you. I think that's what it is. Like, there's people that, it's easy to talk to, and then there's people that you can say whatever you want to say, and they won't. They just look at you and smile.
Do you think that your education gave you tools to help you communicate better and helped you be a better, social person. Yes, I do believe God gives us that strength and those tools, but obviously that was like your training camp. You did a lot of levels of, education, which I do think
Absolutely.
you should mention.
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you go through high school, you're like they're depositing information in your
Right.
brain and in your mind. As you get to college, you're now processing that information and seeing how it works in real life. And then as you move on to your bachelor's, you start selecting your career and you start getting better, and your knowledge begins to increase. So your confidence feel gets better at speaking whatever, career or
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
But when you get to a master's level, now you're having to teach the class. And so now you need to be the master of that topic, of
Right.
that
So
subject
you can
matter.
teach it, yeah.
So you're the teacher. The professor will not give a lecture. Rarely will he give a lecture. He'll tell you how to deconstruct the chapters of the book and
Right.
how to process it. But come next week, the 3 chapters that he assigned to you, you're teaching them to the class.
Right.
So that's why it's a master's. But yeah, I think that, higher education and going to school did play a big part also in my, growing as an adult. And I don't regret it one bit, even though I did it in one of the most difficult ways, because as a first generation college student from my family, you're leading the way.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody that I could ask.
Right.
One of my sisters, like, how did you do this challenging class? How did you navigate college? How did you figure this out? Quite the opposite. I think when I told some of my family members that I was going to school, they went like,
What?
wait, you have kids, you have a husband, and where are you going to fit God in all of this? But again, those mentors, those people that God puts in your life. And I remember my dad telling me, no, 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 hija, go to school. If you need me to babysit, go to school. If you need me to help you, go to school. And my mom was like, Ma, but mija, who's going to take care of Renee? Renee can take care of himself, I'm sure. So, along the way, and these are challenges
Yeah.
and barriers that you have to,
You have
hurdle
to stand
over.
firm in
Yeah.
what you're choosing to do.
Absolutely. Because if not, you'll take them to heart and you'll be like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind. And I've seen how God has blessed my family, with them achieving their academic goals.
Right.
I have seen that. And so I will never, tell somebody, don't go to school, don't pursue your academic career. You can. Just don't lose sight of who you are. Don't lose sight of the child of God that you are. Don't lose sight of His word, His promises. And there were times that I would sit in class and hear something that went against the grain of, my doctrine, my
beliefs, yeah.
beliefs,
Yeah.
and my convictions, and I would recite a psalm. And I think, verse memorization, we don't practice it as much as we should,
Right.
but we should, because
Yeah.
I remember, when we were learning a little bit about Darwinism, it's like, no, Genesis 1:1 said, in the beginning, God created. So I don't know, doctor. I don't know, teacher. You're, in my head, I would have this conversation like, nope, that's not what the
Yeah.
Bible says.
Do you think that you had a more firm foundation in what you believed in because you went to school later in your life? You were already married, you were already a mother, as opposed to had you gone earlier, fresh out of high school, your foundation may not have been as solid. So you could have been more susceptible to having a different, idea of a lot of things you received.
You are absolutely like on point with that. I believe that for me, I think, yes, being a more mature person and already working and serving in ministry and church and then going to school, that may have helped me, anchored me more. And yes, for younger kids, because I experienced that with my kids. But as a mother And because I already knew what they were going to be taught, I had to tell my kids, remember who you are. And to this day, I tell them, remember who you are.
Right.
You are a child of God. You have a target on your back. The enemy is going to try to confuse you, and try to use anything in his power to derail you from your purpose in your ministry. And so I really do believe that yes, you are correct that it does, that the age does make a difference. I think for Isaac, I remember when he went to San Jose State, he did tell us, Mom, I'm going to stay local. I'm going to do community, and then I'm going to go to San Jose and transfer. And he did. And when he got over there, I do remember having a conversation with him saying, oh my goodness, Mom, I'm so glad I was not here when I was a teenager, because these kids, they don't appreciate school. Like they're not here for the right reasons.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
so there's something to be said about that. And then there's young kids that are very mature, even at a very young age, and their ministry is rock solid.
Yeah.
Going a little into the ministry aspect, and actually this could be applied in both fields, but how did you handle I don't know if you really experienced it, but obviously you were coming into going back to school and then you were working. Did you ever face a situation where you were not respected because you didn't have the experience? Did you experience that in ministry, or that those attitudes you face,
Oh, absolutely.
and how did that build you perhaps?
And if I understood your question correctly, I'm going to try to rephrase it, not rephrase it, but
Yeah.
paraphrase it. I You're asking me if I ever at one point or another felt that I was not respected
Yeah.
because I didn't have the leadership experience
Right.
or the tenure. I think it still happens.
Really?
Wow.
God.
Well, people are
I
going to be
do.
people no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just had one of the things that I do in my job is I manage contracts with some of the vendors that provide services for us. And I had sent out an email and I had requested some information, and the person running the program came back at me with like, well, yeah, we're not going to do that. And it's like, but you work for us, right? And so I remember having the conversation with my director and our medical director, which is Dr. Stern. And she's like, but see, Sandra, it's because of this. And she shows me her badge. She's like, it's because mine says doctor in the bottom. Sometimes I think that's why people do what I say they need to do. And it's just, that's just how it happens in the world. It's all about titles.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, and if you don't have that title at the end, then, you're nobody, or you're not at the level of management and leadership that people need to, adhere to. So it happens in the workforce, but I think it also happens sometimes in church.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
gonna say.
because one of the things that I've learned is behavior is behavior. I took a course years ago of organizational behavior, and it studies the dynamics of groups in a variety of settings, whether it's a classroom, a college altogether, a church, a club, a committee. There's dynamics in each of those groups because you're dealing with people's behaviors and all the luggage that people bring to the team. And so, but what I love, and I will tell you this, and I cannot emphasize this enough, what I still see is a huge difference between corporate and the church. Yes, we still struggle with, the behaviors and the leadership and the titles and the hierarchies, and we still have that. But working with God's people, it just brings so much joy to my heart because there's a different sense. And I think maybe over the last few years, God has been working in my heart with that. You can work with difficult individuals in the church, but there is a different dynamic.
Yeah.
It's different than when with the world and work, because you don't know who they are, where they're coming, what if it's, I don't know, if it's a personal attack from the enemy, at a spiritual level, because it does happen. And so there is a distinct difference. But the human factor is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
100%.
I think, now that you're mentioning that, I remember having a conversation with Pastor, and Pastor mentioned something, but he said something that made me think of the work I do at church differently. He said, but the bottom line with church is that we know we love each other.
Yes.
There's that underlying.
Yeah.
the silver
Yes,
lining.
we're
Yes.
not perfect, and we all have our human nature, and our human aspects, and sometimes it comes off, at the surface, to the surface. But he said, but we all know we love each other.
Yes.
We all know, yes, I might have been rude to someone, but that person has the love of God to say,
Yes.
that's not her every day. I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt.
I finally get what you're saying. You know, for a long time, I had never been exposed to anyone else but, one coworker, and pastor. But when I got into the workforce and the real world, in a sense, it was so interesting to see that, oh my goodness, there isn't that general love there. This
Oh my
is
goodness, they really want to see me fail,
it's
right?
a dog eat dog world.
Yeah.
It's very
Absolutely.
different.
They want to see me fail, and at church, I feel like we don't have those attitudes of like,
As much as we may have a conflict,
yeah,
if we fail, we're failing the
Together.
greater purpose
Yeah.
of what we're trying to achieve. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And so I have been able to kind of balance that out, because I'll tell you what happens with this group affects me. And so I may, take it out on this group over here,
oh, I see.
or vice versa. This group, people from God, they give you love and they're so graceful. And I may, be harsh to Lula, but she'll give me that beautiful smile that God give her. And then I go to work and I'm like, oh, but it's like, and they're like, nope. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's right.
This
Change
is
the
work.
scenery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But it's internal. Like, you have to still demonstrate, the love of God, the grace, because you as a person, like, for example, me, I'm in management. I can't make that difference. And I just made this, no mistake this weekend, and I paid for it dearly, because I took recognitions, some type of small recognitions for a certain team that reports directly to me, but not the whole group. And it was like, how could you do that? You're so, you're a manager. You should have considered the whole. And I
Everything
was
is
like,
seen
oh
as
my
favoritism.
goodness,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to speak to the church, if I were to take media coffee one Sunday, nobody's gonna say anything. Everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, that's nice, Sister Sandra." Yeah. But at the office, like, I thought I was doing something nice, and it was taken out of context. And so there is that balance. Like, yes, all the wonderful world that we create at church, with the love of God, the peace of God, the brethren, the sisters. On Sunday afternoon, when it's all said and done, you go Monday and it's a different world.
Right.
You got to be prayed up.
Yeah.
You got to be prayed up. You have to, put on the full armor of God. And if you are fortunate, you will have coworkers that are also believers, and you can share with them your Sunday. You can share with them the goodness of God, and you can share how God ministered to you through a song over the weekend. But when you go to an environment, and our world is changing,
Yeah.
Lula and Kesia, when I started working for the county, if you were a believer, you were considered to be a good person. And not that it is changed, or that anybody has told me otherwise, but I see a shift. Now, if you are a believer, whoa, you're a conservative.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
You have those ideas.
Yes.
Right.
And, and so I think more and more our world is changing, and people, from church, our membership, our brothers and sisters, we're going to start seeing that more and more. And I think, there's a sister that works with me, and this week was very challenging because of what we had to go through with our team at work. And we're going to start seeing more of that. We're going to start seeing more. You are mandated to go to cultural diversity and inclusivity.
Right.
You're more of those other types of events. And so it's going to test our faith. It's going to challenge us. And so we need to be prayed up.
Yeah.
And we need to bring these topics, to the membership. What do you do? How do you resolve it? Who do you go to? Because they're very conflicting. And I would like to believe that we at Revive want to support the membership
Yes.
in those areas.
Yeah. We do.
100%. And we are going to continue this. There's going to be a part 2 episode of this. We're going to continue interviewing Sandra with all her experience in leadership, both in ministry and her career. So stick around for that, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.